Hi there. So today we're going to go a little bit deeper with getting to know how judgment shows up for us personally. Getting to know like maybe the top 2 or 3 familiar judger parts. And then I want to invite you to get really creative and almost kind of start to create a caricature of these judger parts, and not in a way that is othering or separating, but in a way that helps you recognize when this part is present, right? Because in internal family systems, sometimes we say like we're blended with a part, and our judger parts can be so subtle. So it can be hard to notice when we're blended. But if we start to develop like a caricature of the part, so we really get to know, and by that I mean like, is this part male, female, non-binary? What does this part look like? How old is this part? What do they dress like? What does their voice sound like? Do they have a name? We can actually give this part a name, and again, not as a way to other and like push the part away, but more as a way to notice. It's like we're getting to know the part of like, oh, I'm blended with that right now. So I'll give an example. One of my judger parts I will call the planner, and it's really like rolled into this. It's a pretty sticky part for me, and I would say kind of looks a little bit more like a teacher, very close to perfectionism, and also procrastination's wrapped in there, and it's a really sticky part. So once I get kind of into this blended with this planner part that really wants things to be a certain way, this part has very high expectations. It becomes really hard to actually move forward and take action, because this part wants to just stay in the planning phase because there's never going to be any perfect action, right? So as I kind of get to know the texture and feel of this part, it's easier to recognize like, oh, that part's present right now. Okay. And again, not in a way to judge the part or pathologize it, but more of like being able to witness that part. And if you want to take this to even a more visually creative level, you could, like if you have a sense of like, oh yeah, my part looks like a professor, or looks like like a football coach, or it looks like a little girl who's huddled. You could search up on Google like some images, like an image that kind of captures this part, and maybe put it in your journal, print out the image, or you could sketch out an image of like, here's kind of what the part looks like, here's their name. And again, really be kind of thoughtful to, again, in internal family systems, we call self energy is like who we are when we're not in any of our parts. Be thoughtful to be coming from this place when you're identifying the part, because sometimes we have these polarized parts, right? So we might be like, oh, that inner critic is so bad, it just like keeps me down. So when we're feeling that, we're actually blended with another part that really doesn't like the inner critic. So as we're creating these caricatures, see if you can kind of feel into self energy. It doesn't really have an agenda towards this part or any like or dislike. It's more of like curious, like, how is this part like? What do they sound like? What's the vibe? What do they dress like? So again, really starting to get to know, I'd say, your top 2 to 3 judger parts. And again, this can be lots of different forms of judgment, right? This could be like a helper part where you're like, ooh, like I'm not so familiar with this, but people tell me I give them unsolicited advice all the time and it bugs them. So this must be a part. So maybe you have the advisor, like the wise advisor part or something like that. And any parts that you want to be able to identify more easily. And I would just say pick your top 2 to 3. So I would love for you to share any images if you feel comfortable sharing. I bet a lot of people can relate. I really want to hold this activity lightly and and again, as a way just to identify and be able to be curious about our parts and get to know the judger parts a little better. All right, be well, and I look forward to hearing from you.